let's talk about platforms and microservices. We had a lot of high-level conversations, I think, over the last few hours. One of the things that we want to zoom into now is the fact that we see, and I think Zinnov sees as well, many of our clients investing more and more of their energy, more and more of their resources on not products, but either building or enhancing the platforms they have as they sort for greater economies of scale, greater engineering leverage, and ultimately more profit. So what we have here is we've got a great panel of leading industry companies with a broad spectrum of products from software to cloud to hardware. And what we're going to talk about, and hopefully get some questions from you, is how are platforms and microservices, if they're employed, impacting business models, product strategy, product management, product development, etc. So to kick it off, maybe we'll do some quick intros. Peter, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Peter Schmutzer. I'm working for Intel. I hope I don't need to explain my company. We are obviously one of the dinosaurs in this industry, also known as chipzilla when it comes to the analysts. That's a different story. I'm in a procurement organization dealing with external development. So companies like Arisent and Altron, Accenture for sure is one of our big partners I'm regularly working with. And the idea, or what I'm charged to do though, is to find new ways of how we get our products into market. That's literally what we do. We do many of those things with our own people, but we have a very, very substantial business that third parties and consultancies help us to do.
Very good. Siddhartha.
Hi, my name is Siddhartha Agarwal, and I run product management and strategy across the platform as a service portfolio at Oracle. So this topic of platforms and microservices is effectively, platforms is what Oracle delivers. So look forward to having that conversation.
Fantastic. Pankaj?
My name is Pankaj Chawla, and as Kevin mentioned, I run the Accenture Products and Platforms division. We build multiple products, commercial-grade products and platforms across multiple industries, healthcare, financial services, retail, media, etc. So my role is to drive the development, and we invest heavily in building the platforms of today and the future, using some of the base platforms like Oracle, Google, Amazon, and Azure as the base platforms. We'll talk more about that today.
Very good. Well, why don't we start with some definitions? Like, what is a platform and what is microservices? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so, how many of you want a server provisioned faster where you don't have to worry about the IP addressing being assigned, the SSH being assigned, et cetera? How many of you want that provisioned faster?
Just those 7 people.
Yeah,
no
just
else.
the 7 people. Don't be shy. I'm not going to come out and attack you guys. But how many of you, or your teams, how many of your teams love installing, managing, configuring, provisioning, patching, backing up, encrypting software? No one, you guys all love it, right?
On a weekly basis.
No hands. No hands.
So first of all, around platforms, the whole point of a platform, like the way Oracle also thinks about it, is to say, first of all, how can I give you a software-defined virtual data center where through APIs you can provision compute, you can provision networking, load balancers, routers, you can provision the entire infrastructure of a data center and have it be a natural extension to your own data center. So that's infrastructure as service defined as a platform. And then when you think about all the software that is running on top of it, how do you deliver software where all the patching, backup, installation, configuring, scaling, et cetera, is taken care of by the platform provider so that your teams can focus on innovating on that platform, using those capabilities, and not having to worry about all of those things that have been using up the operate dollars of most organizations, of most CIOs, right? So now they can free up all of that money to actually innovate, to leverage AI, to leverage machine learning. So that's one definition of the platform piece. And then microservices, I think Amit had said it really well from Informatica, but the rate of releases, the rate of innovation has to improve, has to increase very significantly, and it has increased. But the thing that's holding it back is that the applications that have been written to date, the software is very monolithic, meaning that 100, 200 developers are working on effectively one piece of code. And in order for them to make changes and release, it takes a long time. In fact, Oracle itself was proud of a release cycle of 18 months to 24 months, right? Now we're releasing every 3 months in the cloud. The way we've gotten to that point is being able to use what are called microservices, which means being able to create small pieces of code worked on by small sets of engineers so that when a problem happens, you can fix really fast. When you want to innovate, you can add to one small piece of code and get that released and not have to test the entire bag of what was built. So that's the definition around microservices, right, that enables agility.
May I add a few points?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, because I look at this as in terms of layers, right? So Siddhartha has defined really well on the base platform is what I call base from my perspective, right? Because above that, you start to build industry-specific platforms or the applications that will consider to be a platform in a one-to-many or a many-to-many manner, right? So what we do is take some of these base aspects that Siddhartha talked about and build enabling technologies, starting with just using base services like database as a service or queuing as a service, but on top of that, using and building industry-specific customer management, procurement management, et cetera, for different verticals. So our goal is very similar, is to build that one-to-many platform that services customers through customization and configuration. But also on the areas of microservices, we look at this, the idea of separation of concerns is not new, right? But what's happened is because these platforms are now deployed in one instance, where one instance serves all the customers on an internet scale, therefore you're able to quickly deploy things. 18 months for an Oracle product was probably very aggressive, and it could be aggressive if you look at the customers taking a long time through user acceptance testing and all the business process management and things that the customers go through and multiple customers go through, and managing that, 18 months is actually quite aggressive. But because now we have one instance and you can quickly upgrade that, the idea of releasing quickly on literally a 3-month basis is not a foreign concept. So when we build our platform services, we think in terms of microservices as well. Separation of concern, domain specific, so that, for example, if you have a return from a customer, what the warehouse does with that return versus what the financial team does with that return are two different microservices. They're not the same logic, if you will. So the idea of writing small services that are independently scalable in a free form is the idea behind the platform and microservices.
So a lot of the concept behind microservices seems to be increasing the clock speed, increasing the cycle time to get new products in. Peter, for you guys at Intel, we maybe think of you too much as a hardware company versus a software solution company. How have you seen platforms, agility, solution orientation impact the product development process at Intel?
Intel today is changing heavily for many reasons. One of them is we need to keep up with pace. You guys are running very fast. You need our compute power to support your products. Release cycles for us so far has been 36 months even, so that's even longer than that. Predictability and forecasting was very hard. I guess the changes we implemented right now is that we tape out much faster. We need to get products into the market that are more customized, less commoditized, if you will. So the platform as such for us becomes the product, and the product needs to be reused cycles. Because any new technology we create, any new node we go from a production perspective, absorbs multi-billions of dollars. And that is in order to create revenue, in order to create the return on invest. We have learned and we have changed the way that we go one new technology node and we do a variety of derivatives to it. That is absolutely new to Intel.
Okay.
In a sense of being faster, being more close to the partners, and taping out fast.
What were some of the challenges organizationally in making that happen? Just some, not all.
So we're still learning
Yeah.
through this period, and I guess we had Daniel talking on brownfield and greenfield. Many of the things we do today for us is greenfield. We have a lot of legacy to take with us, be it our design processes and expectations, the ways we have designed our products, and all of this has to be reworked while we keep our brownfield alive, because that's obviously where we earn the money with.
Very good.
We built parallel streams to do it.
Yeah, and to add to how the product development culture has changed.
Yep.
We've gone from building airplanes and shipping airplanes to, let's say, United, Lufthansa, et cetera, to actually being an airline, where we have to not just build the software, but we have to run and operate the software.
Right.
And we have to do that while it's flying, right? So there's been very significant change in the culture at Oracle. So developers are being put into operations so that developers understand what it takes to actually run operations. So there's rotation schedules for that. Developers are thinking about how they can instrument their software so that when it is in production, when challenges happen, it becomes much easier and faster to be able to figure out the problem. Developers are being told, you don't have to get the entire functionality done. Think in small bits and pieces. Get releases done in 3 months as opposed to needing to do releases in 12 to 18 months. It's okay that you don't have all the requirements defined. Get some capability done. Developers are being told, make your users part of your design team. So get the functionality out, put in ways to instrument feedback from the users, and then be able to build and innovate based on that feedback. And finally, developers are being asked to think about where machine learning fits in, where they can leverage machine learning within the usage paradigm, how the software is being used, how many integrations are being happening, what kinds of integrations are being done across Salesforce and EBS, and how are the objects being mapped between these two so that you can be learning from that and make those default parts of the product. So it's very, very significant change, and it's not just for development. It's for sales, it's for marketing, it's for every aspect of Oracle.
Let's double click on that a little bit. I know we've had a lot of discussion around technology and the concepts of technology, but Pankaj, you've moved a bunch of products from kind of on-prem to a multi-tenant platform model. What were some of the organizational changes and impacts and keys to success that you had?
Yeah. Amit talked earlier about working and building product from scratch, and that's the right way to go. And I think that is in a lot of aspects. But also you have a lot of investment in existing products. So we have invested quite a bit in taking our existing legacy products and converting them into more of a platform products, right, where it's running as a one-to-many model. And to me, Kevin, it's been an impact all throughout, right, in every aspect of the organization. Commercially, legally, now you're more liable for it. It's shifting the risk from a customer to the vendor, right? We own all the risk, customer doesn't. We run it, we scale it, we do the capacity planning, we are responsible for security, we're responsible for uptime and functionality. So commercially, legally, product management is a big change in thinking. How do you build new features that brings the customer into your product, like Siddhartha just described with the airline example. Engineering-wise, you just engineer this differently. You build microservices, and you could talk for days on how to do that. And from the IT operations, either you own the risk of running the data center, which in some cases we do, or we also rely on our partners like Amazons and Oracles and others to have the data centers run on them, our applications run there. But still, the risk is still on us, right, as much as it's on the supplier. And finally, support. The support is very different. With having a single instance, running multiple features, you can now very easily, from the product perspective, do A/B tests. You can deploy pieces of it in certain geographies and study the behavior before you deploy it mass, right? So you have to organizationally have that product management or product organization that can study that, take the input and react to it to be more nimble to the market needs. As well as support while you do that. So to us, every aspect of organization gets impacted
Well,
for it.
customer
It is
success.
fascinating how it does impact every part, including sales comp and revenue recognition.
And sales comp,
all of
yeah,
the different
exactly.
things that you may not think would be part of a needed transformation to make move to platform.
Yeah,
You were
and just
saying.
one quick comment is that customer success has now become critical because customers expect, hey, it's in the cloud. I just need to use it. Within 3 to 4 months, I should be able to know whether this is working for me and be able to identify the impact. So that's become a very key part of what we have to do, where we can't just ship the software and expect them to deal with that. We have to make the customer successful in their leverage of the platform.
And I have a couple of points there too because of the experience we had, Kevin, if that's all right. It's in the past, we used to ship products, right, for a controlled application scenario. Like, we know the users, we know the security model, we know who's going to use it. That's our goal. Today, you build platforms with unknown. You don't know who's going to use it. It has got to operate on internet scale. And anybody can sign up and can start using it and decide within 4 months whether they want to use it or not, like Siddhartha said. So it's a different ballgame, right? It's a different ballgame. It's not the same one.
And I would think Intel's been impacted a lot too as you move to solutions. Maybe you have gone from fewer customers to many, many more. Can you talk about that?
Sure, and I guess that is one of the key challenges in all this platform and microservices, because we are all going closer to the customer. We need to be all more thinking about what customer experience looks like, and that requires a different approach. I guess Intel, how to frame this? The expectation today is things are happening today. Anybody has access to it. I guess we call all AAS as a service, regardless what it is. The platform is in the middle of it. But the platform needs to be designed and built in a way that it is easily to be branched out and adapted to what it is. So we have a lot of customization we face today, while from a requirement perspective, it needs to be all generalized. I guess that's the key dilemma we are in, if you will, how to define and how to define products in a way that they are good enough from a general perspective, but customized enough to fulfill the requirements.
That is a tough balance. Let me pause and see if there's any questions from the audience. Over here, sure, sir.
What's the typical size of your microservices teams that you have?
The question was, what is the typical size of a microservices team, just so the audience can hear? Go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
In our case, it varies quite a bit. In some cases, we have teams that are 5, 8, 10 people, but there are also bigger teams, because there's a lot of capability that is being built out, and we have a lot of knowledge from our past, sort of what we built, let's say, for integration or microservices, et cetera. So the teams vary in size, but there are some that are small enough where they're just 5 to 10 people.
We look at microservice as ideally not more than 200 to 500 lines of code, right? So around that, we have multiple microservices creating a flow, if you will, and then designing teams around that. Again, the goal is to have a separation of concern that can be independently deployed and containerized and scaled out as needed. So if you think in those terms, in the languages they want to write even, right? It doesn't have to be the same language. It's not standardized across anymore. So that's how we structure around the team sizes.
And actually, that's what drives the requirement for a platform. Because if you think about these many microservices, what you've done is you've taken a linear program and broken it up into a distributed program. And that's very hard. You have to now manage the orchestration of these containers. You have to manage the scheduling of these containers. You have to manage the integration of these microservices. You have to manage the monitoring of an application where the transaction is calling upon many microservices that live and die through that process. So how do you do monitoring and management of those? And that's what you should be asking of a platform, is how can I get those capabilities so my developers can choose the language of their choice, be it Java, PHP, Ruby, whatever, and just be able to bring their code. And all the microservices underneath the covers in terms of scaling, orchestration, scheduling, monitoring is taken care of for them.
Yeah.
And I guess this is one of the key challenges when it comes to microservices and what we see as a technology company. There is no standards to it, right? Each service comes with a different language, meaning our technology, our hardware need to be capable to speak all of these. And this is one of the key things we drive today in order to understand how we can drive standardization around those things. What is the right languages to be used in order to define those programs?
Okay. Yep, go ahead, sir.
So, to Peter's point, see, there's a glorification happening of microservices. Almost all organizations, depending on where you are at the adoption curve, you're getting more and more services. Now, the question is, how do you ensure right microservices are available at the right time and the people within the organization then know which one to use and whether it's even available or not, right? I mean, in Accenture environment, when we have 200,000 to 300,000 people now, it's another challenge. Intel or Oracle probably some similar.
Yeah, it's an age-old challenge of cataloging everything you have, whether it was object-oriented programming or microservices today, right?
How are you addressing this?
How are we addressing it? Yeah, we have central bodies that we call centers of excellence, and we have sites, which community of practice sites, where we actually publish processes, methodologies, and frameworks is what we call it. And in the frameworks, you have the listing of the services that gets offered as SDKs, software development kits. It's not a straightforward answer, and I'm not saying we've perfected it, given the fact that we are 350,000 people and growing. But that is the approach we take, is standardized cataloging and also reviewing it past others before you do it.
But if I can add to what he's saying, from our perspective, everything that we do now has to be an API, has to be accessible as an API, right? That means any piece of code that we write, any business logic we write, has to be able to called as an API. So each microservice represents an API. And so for us, what's been really important is making sure that we can expose the APIs, manage the life cycle of the APIs, managing the versioning of the APIs, the security and authentication of APIs. So again, from a platform perspective, having API platform as a service, if you will, is very critical in order to be successful with microservices, where discovery can happen, to your point, right? How do you discover what capabilities you have? So now you can search and discover, and then be able to expose in a developer portal all those APIs. So that's actually fundamental to success with microservices.
That's a great question. It does bring about this need for cataloging, but also the people to help govern the process, the life cycle of the APIs. I want to be sensitive to lunch. Maybe one last. Oh, go ahead.
Let me add to that. I guess from an Intel perspective, what we try to do is showing the world how technology can be used. We spend a lot of money in productizing or in proof of concepts where we define services based on our technology, and we show the world how they work best. I guess that's the only way we can influence on this. Functional safety, when it comes to autonomous driving, maybe is a good example for that, because if you look into how autonomous cars are designed today, take a lot of PCBs, you put them together, you put a layer on top and try them to work. There is no operating system, if you will, that defines how this system is gonna to be designed. And that is one of the key things we're investing in. We have call of actions for the community to come in order to design what is a critical Linux, if you will. What is a critical, or what is a system that holds these critical items? And that's the only way for us to define or to be predictable in how we can design our products.
I want to wrap up with one more question for the group here before we break for lunch, and that's bringing back to the theme of AI.
You want to do the AI, yeah.
Yeah, I know you're waiting for it. So since the theme of the event is AI, how does that affect your platform or microservice strategy? Go ahead, we'll give you the first shot.
Since the topic of the conference was AI, I was trying to bring platform, microservices, and AI all together. When you think about AI, a lot of people have already talked about, you have large data sets. You need to be able to ingest large streams of data. Then you need to be able to store that data. The data is in different formats, so you need to store them in different data stores. Then you need to be able to query across this data, across multiple data sources without needing to bring everything together. And then you got to get business people who are non-data scientists to be able to get insight from this data. Otherwise, what's the point of this, right? And at the same time, you have to enable machine learning and predictive capabilities from this data in the systems themselves. And that's what you should be asking of a platform. One, how can I ingest data? So for example, Kafka delivered as a service. Two, how can I store data? So you've got the Oracle database as a service, but you might want Hadoop clusters and not have to worry about, do I scale up a Hadoop cluster based on storage requirements or based on compute requirements based on the load? Next is analytics delivered as a service. So Spark, for example, how do I leverage Spark as a service on top of the data? And then machine learning capabilities embedded inside it. That's what a platform should be providing. So that all you're doing is saying, here's my sources of data. I'm going to get that in. And now here, I can start getting insight. And you don't have to worry about any of that junk in the middle of how that got set up.
Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, it's simple. Without platform, you have no data. I mean, without cloud-connected sources of data, feeding the data into the cloud, and ability to save this on a commodity hardware so that you can mine and do AI or machine learning on it. I mean, it's a foundational element to AI and machine learning. So yeah, that's why platforms and getting that right and selling it right is the most important piece.
And I really love your idea of generating more and more data. So the best moment is today was when Frank was telling that doubling the data is only requiring 12 hours. It's great. It's all going on our service. So it's okay.
It's good. You bought some more stock today, huh?
That's okay. Well, no, seriously, I guess AI is core to Intel for many ways. We have been transforming from a PC company to a data company big time. We are present in most likely anything which is related to AI. We did some very interesting acquisitions just recently to broaden our portfolio around this. So it is here to stay. I guess it's just hard to grasp what AI will mean going forward and how to answer to it. So we just be prepared for whatever is coming.
I think someone mentioned we're in year 1 of 100 in the journey, so I think that's pretty much where we are. Time for one question from the audience, or if not, we can wrap it up.
Everyone's so hungry, there's no way there's any more questions.
There's no energy.
Yeah.
There's no
Or they
energy
have all
left.
their questions answered.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.